Alright, so we've reached Perek Nun Gimel, chapter 53 of the first section of the book called Tanya. The name of that section is Likutei Amarim. It's a compilation of teachings. Very important part of the book because it contains a very powerful message, and that is how to transform yourself into an individual where the Shekhinah will reside. That is my way of explaining it. How to transform yourself into an individual where the Shekhinah, the divine presence, will want to reside in you. Even though the section of the Tanya is a lot more encompassing, I chose to say it this way because that is how he finishes this chapter 53 in talking about the Shekhinah, the divine presence in this world, and how it is reflected on an individual. In other words, how does the divine presence reside even on individuals? After all, we're talking about a physical world, and the divine presence is something spiritual. Is it possible for the physical to connect to the spiritual? So, in order to understand how this happens, you have to begin from the very beginning. Chapter 1, in describing the neshamot, in describing the various worlds, in describing the difference between the righteous individual and the benoni, the average individual. There are a lot of concepts that he goes through. And as I said last week, but he chose to emphasize and to finish this portion of the book in talking about the Shekhinah, as you will see, because in the end, what life is all about for the human being, not just for the Jew, is to transform this world, to elevate this world to the highest realm possible. In other words, Hashem created the world, but He left something for us to do, something for us to perfect. So when we talk about elevating, why elevate? Why transform the physical to the spiritual? When we're talking about elevating, we're talking about perfecting, and we're talking about connecting to God. There's a great need to do that. Otherwise, there is a total lack of direction. It's totally senseless why people have to work so hard, born into this world, die. What for? Life is purposeful. There's meaning in creation. There's meaning in actions that we perform. And depending on what those actions are, they can either be constructive or destructive of the world and of ourselves. So when we talk about transformation, we're talking really about the transformation of the world and the transformation of oneself. One cannot, however, transform the world before he transforms himself. If people do not walk in the path of Torah, in the path of Hashem, it is impossible for them to achieve anything close to rectifying this world, to perfecting it. It's impossible. What is required is, at the very least for the non-Jews, fulfilling the 7 Noahide laws, and for the Jew to observe the 630 mitzvot, because these mitzvot are the tools that will be necessary to elevate the world and to transform ourselves. So without that, without doing what we're told to do, what we're expected to do, it is impossible for the human being to ever see a positive change in himself or in this world. What I would like to do, before we go on to the chapter, is briefly tell you what I once heard from the Rebbe of Lubavitch, of blessed memory. He mentioned the famous passage in the Talmud that right before Mashiach arrives, Ha'emet yeh ne'ederet, truth will be lacking. The rabbis describe the generation before Mashiach as a generation where truth is lacking. And that's very interesting. I was thinking about this, and the fact is that truth was always in some ways lacking because there was always concealment, which is what the Tanya discusses many times. There's a concealment of the divine light. This is the Olam HaSheker, after all. The rabbis call this world the world of falsehood, because there's a lot of falsehood that conceals that light of Hashem. So there has always been Sheker. So what does it mean that right before Mashiach comes, that truth will be lacking? Falsehood will be reigning, or as it is being called today, fake news. Perhaps what the rabbis meant is that it will be a lot more difficult to ascertain, to know the truth than before. The darkness will be everywhere. It will therefore be more challenging to be observant of the mitzvot and to come close to God. More difficult, more challenging than before, because of a greater darkness. As the rabbis tell us, there is a concept called Yeridat Hadorot. The generations have become weaker and weaker. We always like to compare to the past by saying, in our parents' time, in our grandparents' time, kids did not misbehave that way. Kids were much more respectful of their teachers and their parents, and it's true. We can actually see the difference in 20, 30 years between one generation and another. So yes, there is greater distance today from that which is divine and spiritual. Therefore, there's a lot more sheker, a lot more falsehood, and therefore truth is lacking much more than in the past. A greater concealment of the truth. So the Rebbe went on to ask, well, if truth is lacking, then how do you discover truth? You want to know the truth? He says, only through the Torah. By learning Torah, by learning the ways of Hashem, one will be able to come to the truth. But that is a very short answer to a very complex question. There are a lot of non-Jews who would like to know the truth as well and do not have the Torah. Well, perhaps they too can gain a lot by reading from the Torah. But it's not so much just reading of the Torah. What is really required is pretty much what he will say towards the end. The most important step that any human being must take in order to connect to Hashem, in order to be able to realize the truth, is to be prepared to be subservient to a God that he does not know yet, perhaps. What we call in Hebrew hitbatlut. Are you willing to annul yourself before Hashem? Or do you insist on becoming or being independent of him, not knowing him, leading your life on your own, without being told what to do from above, without any rules guiding you? That is where the difference will be. Those who choose to become completely independent of God, well, we know what happened to them when they were trying to build the Tower of Babel in the very beginning of Bereshit. It is discussed. What were they trying to do? Build a tower to escape God. It says in the future, if there will be a big flood, we will be able to survive it. There's a lot of commentaries as to exactly what their thinking was in building that big Tower of Babel. But it's that whole era, whether it's the generation of the flood or the generation of the Balaga, the ones who built the Tower of Babel, they were doing their best to escape responsibility. We're not responsible or accountable for actions. We do as we wish. Who says that we have to follow what God says? They want to control their lives the way they see it fit. And that is really the source of idol worshiping. Create a religion that suits your own personal needs and agenda. God has his own agenda, has his own rules. Apparently, a lot of people do not like them. They don't want to lead their lives by it. So they're not willing to be subservient to him. They want to be subservient a little bit to an idol who doesn't bother them too much, doesn't demand of them too much. That they like. Of course there are powers in this world. They recognize these powers. But these powers let's make them happy once in a while, let's bring a sacrifice to them. And sometimes those were human sacrifices, just to make them happy. But to lead a life according to certain rules of this yes and this not, oh no, that's too regulated, too much discipline. For what? So that is the eternal conflict that human beings have between doing what the soul, what the neshama is telling them to do, versus what the physical body would rather do. And a lot of people are unaware of that soul, of that pure soul, because they are trapped in this very, very physical world. So the human body is the home team, as I've explained before, in the physical world. Who has a better chance of winning? The home team. There's so much going for the physical body in this world. So it's not easy. Therefore, he makes it very clear to us. You want the Shekhinah to reside on you and guide you. You need a vessel. You need the Torah. And that's been the message all along. The Torah is the vessel. The mitzvot are the tools by which we are able to connect to Hashem. Without that, it's impossible. A person can say, I have a good heart. I believe in God. No, that's not enough. It's important to perform. Deeds are necessary. Otherwise, what happens is what's going on in the world today. There's not enough good being done. A lot of bad is going on. A lot of selfishness, a lot of materialism. And because of that, look at the results. Marriages are breaking up. In the past, marriages did not break up so easily. Once in a while. Everything is breaking down. People are no longer communicating with each other. Everything is messages. Everywhere you look, you're seeing a breakdown of values, of beliefs, a lack of unity, more divisiveness, conflict. That is obviously because man has become more and more distant from that which is spiritual. And in the same way that the physical body needs physical food to survive, the neshama, the soul, needs spiritual nourishment to survive. People want to be excited. People want to be happy. It's good, it's healthy. But they think money will bring them happiness. And when they see that it doesn't, they're disappointed because the answer is not money. What can you do with all the money? You're going to take it with you? So people don't learn that the real value of something that is permanent, that really makes a difference, is that which we do in this world that connects us with Him. Why? Because if one is properly connected to Hashem, he will be guided to do the right thing. He will avoid the pitfalls. Hopefully he will not make mistakes. He will realize that God is in control. He will therefore not be upset when things do not go the way he planned for them to go. He will realize that there is a reason for everything, that is that which is beyond his control. And he will come to the realization that in the end what makes all the difference is the area where we have free will. And which area is that? Do we fear God or not? Do we observe his mitzvot or not? As Kohelet, Solomon says in his book Ecclesiastes at the very end, Ki zeh kol ha'adam. This is what man is all about. This is his real achievement. Did he leave this world with a good name? Was he a good father, a good husband, a good friend? Or was he a nasty individual, dishonest in business, and didn't care about doing good deeds, only cared about himself? This is what man is all about. All the skyscrapers that he may have built, he won't take with him. They all stay behind. So what is man's real achievement? So for a Jew, it should be obvious, because we have the Torah. The Torah spells it out. It can't get clearer than that. But even for those who learn the Torah, unfortunately, they have a very difficult time. Part of that difficulty is because they're distracted. there's a lack of focus. That is why the rabbis insist, and the Baal Tanya stresses that very, very, very much, that even when you do a mitzvah, do your best to have kavanah. In other words, do the mitzvah having the proper intent and focus. Why am I doing this? When you say a prayer, say it out loud. Because when you say it out loud, it awakens that kavanah. All of these little details make a difference to stay focused, to stay connected. Just saying it because it's second nature, it's just a habit, it's just routine, it won't do anything. If you tell your wife, I really like you, but you don't mean it, I think eventually she'll be able to tell. Because people are not always sincere. Actions speak louder than words, there's a saying in Russian. Words are cheap. Prove it. Prove it with actions. So, when one does not have an idea of what life is all about, it is not going to be easy for him to have the kavanah, the focus and the intent. He's just going to do something because he was taught to do it. But when he realizes what this is for, just a little bit what this means, and why it's important for him to do it, and he has a proper focus, this mitzvah alone will transform him. Forget about the reward that is waiting for him in the afterlife. Mitzvot transform the person. When you give charity, you become more of a giving person than a receiver. A lot of people love to receive. They just want to receive. Give me, give me, give me. Become a giver, not a taker. How am I going to do that? By doing the mitzvot, by doing them properly, with the right kavanah. So that is the significance of emphasizing the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah resided amongst the Jewish nation in a very, very big way during the first temple. In a somewhat lesser way in the second temple era. And he's going to explain why. The Shekhinah is still around. But miracles are not as revealed as they were in the past. So the presence of that Shekhinah that was felt and experienced very, very much in the past is not as felt today, unless one learns Torah. Because the rabbis tell us, today the Shekhinah is focused where there is the learning of Torah. Because that is the vessel through which the Shekhinah dwells amongst us. Nonetheless, there's different levels. People experience different things depending on their level of spirituality. There were great prophets who were on a very, very high level. Today we don't have that. But even though we don't have it, we still have a little bit of it. So, in discussing chapter 53, we need to keep in mind what he said in chapter 52. That the Shekhinah, which is the light of Hashem, for it to come down in the physical world, it needed to have a levush, it needed to have a garment, because the light is very powerful. And we spoke about the garment being the Torah, and how the Torah, because it's from a higher plane than the Alma de Itgalia, than the revealed world, it can be a garment and not cancel out itself. Because imagine that bright light, you're going to cover it with a garment. Well, the garment won't be able to handle it either. So we explained that that garment, the Torah, is from a higher plane than that which we call the Alma de Itgalia, the revealed world. Revealed world is that where the light of Hashem begins to shine, begins to be observed, and begins to form or create different kind of creations, like the angels, and later the human beings. The Torah, therefore, being from a higher plane, being from the Chokhmah, being that it is the will of Hashem, has no problem serving as a garment. Still, this Torah also comes down through the various worlds, progressive descent of the worlds until it reaches the Olam Asiyah, the physical world, the world of actions. And here it is where it is performed. So we have physical ma'asim being performed because we're in a physical world. This is not a world where you can just learn Torah by meditating on it. This is a physical world. Physical deeds are required. So he explained how the Shekhinah went from world to world, but made stops in the brain of that world, in the mochin, in the chokhmah binah v'da'at of that lower world. And that is called the Echal, Kodesh Kodashim, of that world. The temple of that world, where the brains are. The Shekhinah comes in there, and from there, it continues on to the Malchut of that world. And it's in the Malchut of that lower world where all the creations of that world come about. This is just a step-by-step description of how this light, the Or HaShekhinah, the Or Ein Sof, travels and goes down and is concealed more and more as it goes down the various worlds until it reaches the physical world. So what I'm going to do is just read to you from the inside of the book, and this way we will be able to go through it a little bit faster. What is the difference between Bayit Rishon and Bayit Sheni? Most of you only know, perhaps, that the first temple lasted 410 years, and the second temple lasted 420 years. Right? Well, the first temple era was a very, very different era than the second temple era. During the first temple era, we had prophets. During the second temple era, we didn't have prophets. The rabbis described to us in detail the very many things that were lacking in the second temple era. We simply didn't have them. We talk about the Jewish people coming back from the Babylonian exile after 70 years and building a second temple. As I said earlier, there has been a yerida of the dorot, a going down, a weakening of the generation. That generation cannot compare itself to the generations before, even though they had great rabbis and tzaddikim, righteous people. Still, it was lower, in a lower level. And that lower level was noticeable in the Beit HaMikdash too, in various ways. When the first temple was around, that is the most important difference. In the first temple, you had the Aron, the Ark, the tablets in the Holy of Holies. Now, people don't know this, but in the Ark, what did you have inside exactly? You had not only the tablets that Moshe brought down the second time, but even the broken tablets. And a Sefer Torah that Moshe wrote. So these are the words of Hashem, that Hashem engraved on the tablet. So in the Beit HaMikdash HaRishon, the first one, you have the Aron and the Luchot in the Holy of Holies. So then, because that's where the Luchot were, Hayta Shekhinah Shehi Malchut Atzilut, Shehi B'chinat Gilui Or Ein Sof Baruch Hu Shora Sham, ומלובשת בעשרת הדיברות, ביתר שאת, ביתר עוז, בגילוי רב ועצום. יותר מגילוייה בהיכלות קודש קודשים שלמעלה בעולמות עליונים. You have the Shekhinah in a much more powerful and revealed way, dwelling over there, closed in the 10 commandments which are in the tablets, in such a powerful revelation, which is a lot more than the revelation of that same light in the Echalot that we mentioned before, the Echalot of the upper worlds. Wow. In the lower world, it was more revealed and more powerful than in the upper worlds. כי עשרת הדיברות הן כללות התורה. The 10 Commandments, after all, encapsulate the Torah kula, all the Torah. And where does the Torah come from? The nafka migor chokhmah elad le'ela le'ela me'alma d'itgalia. The Torah, after all, comes from where? From a higher plane, as we said before. It comes from Chokhmah, the higher Chokhmah, which is higher than the Almadid Galia, than the revealed world. So the Shekhinah, therefore, is in a spot where the Chokhmah of the upper world is. וכדי לחקקן בלוחות אבנים גשמיים, and in order for those words of Hashem to be engraved on avanim gashmim, physical material stones, the tablets, לא ירדה ממדרגה למדרגה כדרך השתלשלות העולמות עד העולם הזה הגשמי. It did not go down in the same way in the progressive descent of the worlds until the physical world. Because כי העולם הזה הגשמי מתנהג בהתלבשות הטבע הגשמי. This physical world, the way it conducts itself, the way things run in this world, is through nature. והלוחות, but the tablets are מעשה אלוקים המה. They are the works of Hashem. והמכתב מכתב אלוקים הוא למעלה מהטבע של העולם הזה. And the writing is also the writing of Hashem, of God, which is above nature of this physical world, הגשמי, the material world. הנשפע מהארת השכינה שבכלל קודש קודשים דעשייה, which is deriving its flow of light from the Hichal, from the temple, the holy temple, of the world of Asiya, from which it receives or derives the light and the vitality, v'chiyut la'olam ha'asiya, to this physical world. שגם העולם הזה בכללו, which our world is in the physical world. So this Shekhinah coming down to the tablets did not go in the same way as I just described, the various worlds, how the Shekhinah went from world to world until the lower world. No. When we're talking about the Shekhinah coming down and dwelling in the Kodesh HaKodesh, in the Holy of Holies, when the Aron was there, it happened differently. We're talking about the Chokhmah, the higher supernal wisdom, from Atzilut, which is the highest world. Shiklalut Torah, which encompasses or encapsulates in the Torah, the entire Torah, which is in the Aseret HaDibrot, in the Ten Commandments. The entire Torah in the Ten Commandments? Yeah. Because even though all it is Ten Commandments, you have the entire Torah encapsulated in Ten Commandments. For those who know, there is a connection between every one of those commandments to all of the Torah. So you have this Chokhmah, the higher form of Chokhmah, which is encapsulating the entire Torah, which is in the Ten Commandments. Nitlabsha b'malchut d'atzilut u'debriya levadan. It only vested itself in the malchut of the two higher worlds, Atzilut and Briya. It did not come down further, gradually going down like the regular descent of the Shekhinah through the worlds when it went down to create the worlds. Here we're talking about the Torah. So we're talking about a Torah that is above the Almadi Gali, the real world, coming down or dressing itself in the malchut of Atzilut and Briya themselves. והן לבדן המיוחדות באור אינסוף שבתוכן הן הנקראות בשם שכינה השורה בקודש קודשים בבית ראשון. They themselves on their own, united with the light of the Ensof that is with them, they are called Shekhinah, that is dwelling in the Holy of Holies of the first temple. How? על ידי התלבשותה בעשרת הדיברות החקוקות בלוחות שבארון. By dressing itself up in the Ten Commandments that were engraved in the Luchot, that were in the Aron, Benes. It was in a miraculous way, as the rabbis explained, that there were two letters, the Samach and the Mem, that were like hanging in mid-air because the engraving was from one side to the other, all the way across. So it was a miraculous engraving, a miraculous form of engraving. Therefore, Maaseh Elokim Chaim, this is also the work of the living God. And when he says living God, he means Hu Almadit Kasya, in reference to the hidden world. There's Alma D'Itgalia that we've been talking about, the revealed world. And there's above that the hidden world, the concealed world. As the Kabbalists know that we're talking about the Bina of Atzilut coming into the world of Beriah. And that is the Alma D'Itkasya. So we're talking about something that's coming from all the way above. So therefore, you have this tremendous revelation of the Shekhinah in Beit Rishon, and as a result of that, the miracles were also a lot more revealed. Simply stated, there was a more powerful revelation of the Shekhinah during that time. There was Nevuah, there was prophecy at that time, and you ask yourself, well, what happened? Why did Hashem take it all away? The simple answer is man has become more distant, so Hashem has become more distant. So there's a gradual descent. That's how I explain it. The same way that there's a gradual descent, a progressive descent in creating the worlds, man has done this to himself too. He has gradually descended or distanced himself more and more, become weaker and weaker in his attachment. In the past, prayer was much more fervent. The righteous were willing to pray for 2-3 hours long, and there was nothing for them. Today, people want to get it over quickly. They're in a rush. It's a more materialistic, physical world. People want to take it easy, go on vacation. Anything that is a burden, that it's hard. So you see this gradual deterioration, unfortunately. But there's a benefit to that too. And you may be surprised. A benefit? Yeah. Well, when the Gilui, the revelation was powerful, and we had prophecies, we have more open miracles, the Avodah Zarah, the idol worshiping, was powerful too. The Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination of the Sitra Hara, that was the power of the other side, of the impure forces, was much more powerful because you had to have a balance. You have open miracles, then it's going to be obvious that there's a God to this world. You can't do what you want. So Hashem made that, there's powerful miracles, powerful witchcraft. So people will say, he's a miracle maker as well. Yeah, but he's a miracle maker from the other side, from the impure side. Well, what difference does it make? It makes a big difference. That's coming from the Tumah. That's not real. It's fake. Don't you know that? What do you mean fake? People were misled. Nevuah, prophecies taken away. All those revealed miracles are taken away. So is that power taken away. So even though you still have impure forces today, you still have some level of witchcraft today too, but not as much as in the past. It's not as powerful as in the past, and it's not as common. You don't see it as much. Hashem has to make it equal. If you have open miracles, you have to have a powerful impure force. If there's not open miracles, then you can't have a powerful impure force, and it's not fair. See what I mean? It has to be equal. So you have, as a result of the revelation becoming dimmer and dimmer, still there, you're having all this concealment of that light, which of course has caused tremendous problems to the Jewish people, because, at one time things were more obvious, and now everybody's saying, well, prove it to me that this is true. I have to prove it to you. Your grandfather gave his life for this. Isn't that enough? Oh, I think he was primitive. He believed in fairy tales. Yeah, that's what some people will say. But he was a very intelligent man. And so was his father and his grandfather. They were all primitive, and you were smarter than them, right? That's what you think. They don't even digest all that. They don't have the time. Send me an email link about this, I'll look at it later. They don't have the time to absorb all of this. That's how low this world is, this generation is today. Nobody has the time. Give it to me quick, fast. You think people are interested to hear an entire lecture for an hour or more? No, very few people are interested in that. So that tells you the quality of people in this world, in this generation. They have no interest in that which is spiritual. Totally not interested. Unless they have a very, very strong divine spark that is awakening. Sometimes a person's divine spark, the neshama, awakens. Something happens to them in their life, or they're simply very sensitive, or they gave something a lot of thought. So that divine spark all of a sudden is awakened, and then they realize that they better do something about their life. Otherwise it's going to get out of control, and they're not going to be very, very happy. So sometimes people catch themselves young, some people catch themselves when they're older in realizing that they made mistakes, and that there must be something else to life than just work, eat, sleep. What else is there? That is the neshama speaking to them. Don't forget about me. So even during the first temple era, we had a very powerful Yetzer Hara. But at least the Shekhinah was revealed in such a strong way that perhaps if the prophet spoke and rebuked the individual, he would take something from it. It did not always work. Just look at the prophets, Yeshayahu, Yirmiyahu, calling out to their people. The temple is about to be destroyed. So what happened? Yeah, of course we have prophets, but what did we say before? We have false prophets too. Come on, don't believe what he's saying. And that's what the generation of Noach told Noach. Noach, what are you doing? Building a teva? God is going to destroy the entire world? No, he's not. He just created the world. But he's going to destroy it. He doesn't destroy it. You destroy it yourself. You bring about your own destruction. Anyway, so that's been the problem that mankind has had all along, is unfortunately falling in the trap of that nachash, of that serpent. You're going to be like God. You're going to one day reach the moon, reach Mars. You're going to do anything you want. Yeah. That's exactly what's happening today, that self-confidence that a lot of people are gaining by seeing advances in technology, which are, by the way, very good, the advances in technology and medicine, but it has side effects in that it is dangerous. It sometimes misleads a person to think that that's all there is. Yes, we'll reach the stars one of these days. Is that what life is all about? You want to reach the stars? You won't get there not in your lifetime, and not in your children's lifetime, and not in your great-grandchildren's life. You know how long it takes to get to the nearest star? So why even think about it? Why don't you focus and concentrate on that which is more immediate? Do you know how many people are starving from hunger? Why don't you do something about that instead of spending billions of dollars to send a spaceship to see if there's water in one of the moons of Saturn? Perhaps we can one day live there. Why would you want to live there? I don't know. Make this a better place. So you won't want to run away and want to live somewhere else. So look how people's mind is distorted, intentionally distorted. Because they don't want the alternative. They're not interested in transforming themselves. That's too hard. It is harder. It is harder to transform oneself than to send a spaceship up. That's easier. But that's what Hashem says, this is what I want for this world. If you want me to be here with you, to dwell amongst you, you need to be connected with me. So what happened in the second temple? We had no luchot in the second temple. Right before the first one was destroyed, Yoshiyahu the king, about 58 years or so before the destruction, he already knew that the temple was about to destroy. He hid it, according to our tradition, underneath the Temple Mount, in caverns that Shlomo Melech had already prepared when he built the temple. And Mashiach, when he comes, that is one of the first things that he does, is take out the luchot and show it to us. Along with the luchot, you have the tzintzemet haman, you have that jar of man. Remember the jar of man that was, Hashem said, put away as a souvenir for all generations to come? It's there too. Shemen HaMishcha, the oil that was used to anoint the priests. There's a flask. Several things are hidden over there underneath. Beit Sheni, they were not there. Beit Sheni, shelo haya bo aron v'luchot. So the rabbis tell us that because those things were missing, shelo hayta shechina shora bo, the shechina was not there. Now, does that mean it was not there at all? No. Of course it was there. Pirush madrigat shechina, the level of the shechina, shayta shora bebait harishon, the level of shechina that we had in the first temple, shelo kederech ishtalshelut haolamot, that was not in the same way as the progressive descent of the world. So as I said before, it was directly from the first two worlds, Atzilut and Bria, directly into the words engraved in the Luchot. You don't have the regular descent, world by world. אלא בבית שני הייתה שורה כדרך השתלשלות והתלבשות מלכות האצילות במלכות דבריאות, בריאת במלכות היצירה ויצירה באחד קודש קודשים לעשייה, קודש קודשים לעשייה, היה מתלבש בקודש קודשים של בית המקדש שלמטה. In the second temple you did have the progressive descent from Malchut of Atzilut going to Malchut of Bria and going to the Malchut of Yetzirah, and the Yetzirah going to Echal Kodesh Kodashim of Asiyah. And the Kodesh Kodashim of Asiyah, Hayah would be mitlabesh, would close itself up in the Kodesh Kodashim of the Bet HaMikdash, Shelemata, down here below. V'sharta bo ha-Shekhinah Malchut de-Yetzirah, the Shekhinah being Malchut de-Yetzirah, was dwelling or closed HaMelubeshet Kodesh Kodashim de-Asiyah. Now what's interesting here is that he's talking, remember, about the direct link of the Shekhinah to the Bet HaMikdash, the second one here, as opposed to just the physical world. Because when you're talking about the physical world, not the Bet HaMikdash, then you have another level coming down into the Malchut of Asiyah. And then you have the Levush of Klipat Noga in this physical world that completely conceals from us that there's a spiritual world, a spiritual dimension. But if you have the Torah, you don't have that concealment anymore. So that is the great advantage for those who learn Torah. There's less of a concealment. The concealment of Klipat Noga, which we spoke a lot about, that shell, Klipa, that has some good and some bad, it still acts as a form of Klipa. And what is a Klipa? What does a shell do? It conceals, it covers. You can't see the fruit because of the peel, because of the shell. Same thing with Klipat Noga in this world. The Torah does not have that Klipat Noga. So the Shekhinah did reside in the Second Temple era, but in a lower way. It went through the gradual descent, and not directly from the above worlds into the Luchot. There's no Luchot. So therefore, instead of taking a shortcut, it's taking the what?
Long way?
Taking a longer way, perhaps. It did not take the short way as it did in the First Temple era. It took a longer route to the same place, same location, but there's no Luchot. ולכן לא היה רשאי שום אדם להיכנס שם לבד כהן גדול בבית המקדש, לבד כהן גדול ביום הכיפורים. Nobody was allowed to go into the Holy of Holies, whether it was the first temple or the second temple, except for the Kohen Gadol, the high priest on Yom Kippurim. Why? This was a very, very powerful room. That spot where the Shekhinah dwelled, whether it was in a big way or in a lower way, it was there. Nobody was allowed to go in there. You know what they say, the rabbis tell us, that during the first bite, we only had about 18 Kohanim Gdolim, high priests, in 410 years. They lived a good, long life. What's the problem? there was always a risk that if he was not qualified or didn't do his job right in Yom Kippurim, he would not last. They were very concerned about that. If he did last, he made a big party that he made it. 18 Kohanim Dolim in the first temple. How many do you think were in the second temple? 420 years? 300. Figure out why. They didn't even last barely a year. Some of them a little bit more, some of them a little less. Why? They were not good. Not. During the second temple era, you had a lot of Kohanim Godolim that were really not qualified. They bought it with money. Bribery. Friend brings a friend, they say. You know. First temple era, of course, there were issues too, but the Kohanim Dolim were definitely on a much higher level, were righteous. And because of that, you know, they survived. The second temple era, it wasn't like that. Still, the Kodesh HaKodashim, no one else can enter there, even though the second temple era, the Luchot were not there. So what now? V'shacharav Bet HaMikdash, ever since the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed, Eno LaKadosh Baruch Hu B'Lamor L'Dalet Amot Shel Halacha. All that Hashem has left, in a sense, even though there's still the Temple Mount, even though that's still where the Kotel HaMaravi, the Western Wall, is, the main place where Hashem dwells is the 4 cubits of Halacha Bilvad. Halacha? Why Halacha? Why not Kabbalah? Why not just say any other portion of Torah? No, it says Halacha for good reason. He's going to explain. Even if one on his own is by himself learning Torah, Shekhinah imo. The Shekhinah is with him. We know, for example, the Shekhinah is wherever there's 10 men praying together. Obviously, the Shekhinah can be found in certain locations, depending on what is happening in that location. You know, the Rebbe of Belz once came into the Bet Midrash where his students were learning late at night, and all of a sudden he asked them, "Can anyone tell me where God is?" So the students looked at him, what kind of a question is that? They told him the verse says, Malek kol haaretz kevodo, Hashem is everywhere. He says, no. Hashem is where you let him in. There are some people who are not letting him in. And I explained it a little bit differently. Where is Hashem? Where is the Shekhinah? From wherever you don't drive him away. Hashem is everywhere, but there are people through their actions, they drive the Shekhinah away. That's when you have tremendous calamities, God forbid, from over the place. The Shekhinah is totally removed from that place. There's a lot of evil there. That has happened throughout history. People, because of their actions, have driven away the Shekhinah. Wherever there is holiness, obviously the Shekhinah will want to dwell there. So even if one is on his own, sitting and learning Torah, Shekhinah imo, as it's mentioned in the Gemara and Berachot, Pirush Shekhinah imo kederech ishtalshelut v'hitlapshut malchut atzilut. What does it mean the Shekhinah is with him? In the same way that the Shekhinah came down progressively from atzilut b'malchut debriyah v'yitzirah v'asiyah, ki taryag mitzvot haTorah ruban kekulan hem mitzvot ma'asiyot. Now he explains why he said halacha. Because the mitzvot of the Torah, the vast majority of them, are mitzvot ma'asiyot, are mitzvot to be performed. There are some gamat liyot bedibur u'machshava. There are some that, of course, that we fulfill by using our speech and using our thoughts. Kemo Talmud Torah, learning the Torah, Birkat HaMazon, when we say the blessing, the grace over the meal, Kriyat Shema, Tefillah, prayer. But wait a minute, it's just machshava and just dibur, just thought. Does thought have any weight? He says, yeah. Even though thoughts are not exactly like speech, one will not fulfill his obligation of performing the mitzvah just by meditating on it. Until he says the words. Why does saying make any difference? Because We hold that if one makes a motion with the lips, it's called that he did something. So in the end, even that which is said with our lips properly is considered an action. The Taryag mitzvot Torah and all the 613 mitzvot of the Torah, im sheva mitzvot Rabbanan, including the 7 rabbinic mitzvot, it has the same gematria, same numerical value as keter, as crown. Where's the crown? On the head, on the brain. And what does that brain have? That is the Retzon HaElyon Baruch Hu. That is indicative of the will of Hashem. Amelubash b'chokhmato yitbarach. That will of Hashem is closed in His wisdom. Ameyuchadot be'or ein sof. That is united with the eternal light, Baruch Hu. B'tachlit ha'yichud, in a complete unity. V'Hashem b'chokhma yesad aretz. Hi Torah shebal peh. And Hashem established the world. That is referring to the oral word, the nafka mechokhma, which comes out of the higher chokhmah, which is the Torah shebechtav, the written word. As the Zohar says, the Abba Yasad Brata, the father, referring to the chokhmah, brings about Brata, brings about the daughter, referring to Malchut, referring to Torah shebal peh. So what do you have here? You have here the Ratzon HaElyon in the halakha. That's why he mentions halakha here. The Shekhinah dwells where one is learning halachot. One is learning Torah, of course, but halachot represent the will of Hashem. To end the chapter, he reminds us of what he said earlier in another chapter, that this is the meaning of what the Zohar, in quoting the Yenuka, the child, meant. If you recall, the Zohar quotes the Yenuka, a child who started giving a whole explanation about the neshama in oil, in a candle, in a wick, if you recall that example. This is what the Yenuka meant when he talked about the Nehora Ilah, the upper light, the Adlik al Reshe, that is illuminating on top of the head. What is that? Ishchinta. This is the Shekhinah. And this Shekhinah, it's tarich lemashcha. It needs oil. What does that mean? To close itself up in the chokhmah, in the wisdom that is called the oil of the holy anointment. As it says in the Zohar, V'inun uvadin tavin. And it's not the Torah alone, even though the Torah does act as a vessel for the Shekhinah, obviously, the Torah being his chokhmah. However, in the end, the oil that is really necessary for the Shekhinah to continue to illuminate above the head of the individual is the Ovadin Tavim, is the good deeds. Good deeds need to be performed. A person can actually say, I'm going to learn Torah a whole day. Aren't you going to help people? Aren't you going to invite guests over? There's a lot of mitzvot that need to be performed. You can't just sit a whole day and learn. The real oil is the Ovadin Tavim, the good deeds. And these are the Taryag mitzvot. These are the 630 mitzvot and imshachot mechokhmato yitbarach that come from Hashem's wisdom. Kedei le'choz ora Shekhinah bepetilah, in order for the light, this light of the Shekhinah, to hold on to the wick. What's the wick? Hi nefesh ha'chiyunit. That is the living soul. Shebeguf, in the body, anikret petilah, it's called a wick. As a mashal. And he says, why is it like a wick? Kemo shebanera gashmi, in the same way that when you have a physical candle, in the same way that with the physical candle, the wick burns. And it's when the wick is burning that there is illumination, because it is converted to fire, that which is burning in the wick. So in the same way that the light illuminates as a result of something being burnt, in this case the wick. Same thing is kach ora Shekhinah. The light of the Shekhinah, shora al nefesh hailokit, it really dwells on the spiritual soul, because the spiritual soul is compared to a candle. But it will only continue to dwell there if we annul or burn the physical soul, vitapchuta, by transforming or converting it, michashucha lenehora, from darkness to light, mimeriru lemataka, and from bitterness to sweetness, by tzaddikim. And here he reminds us what he said many chapters ago. There's the difference, the main difference between the work of the righteous tzaddikim in this world and the regular, average, intermediate people is that the tzaddik transforms, as we began to say. He really transforms himself from darkness to light. He really makes a tremendous change in himself, from one end to another. So, by performing deeds and doing them in a correct way, of course, through love and fear of Hashem, as he explained, one can transform himself, and this can only happen when he consumes, just like the fire consumes the wick, when he consumes or he burns or he annuls that animal spirit and changes it from darkness to light. That's for tzaddikim. Or lefachot, or at the very least, if you talk about average people, average by the way meaning people doing the right thing, but they're not like tzaddikim, alidei kilyon levusheha, by consuming its garments. What are the garments of the soul? Machshava, dibur, u'maaseh. At the very least, by annulling them, transforming them, the thought, the deed, and the speech, vitaputam, and changing them or converting them, transforming them, mechoshech haklipot leor Hashem, from the darkness of the impure shells to the light of Hashem, and so Baruch Hu, that is dressed up or clothed and united with the machshava, dibur, u'maaseh of the Taryag mitzvot Torah, of the 613 mitzvot Torah. That is how you will consume the physical soul, or in this case, the speech, the thought, and the deed of the physical soul, to transform them to be connected with the 630 mitzvot Torah. Bebenonim. In other words, you can transform those three garments, Mashava, Dibur, Maaseh, from the klipot to the Or Hashem, through the performance of the 630 mitzvot Torah in Benonim. Why? Because by transforming the animal soul that comes from the impure shell called klipat noga, mechashucha lenehora, from darkness to light, nasa b'chinat halat man, which is something very deep in the Kabbalah that we've explained before, that what is being done by performing these deeds down here below, and they're difficult, but it's a major accomplishment, because what that does, it triggers something very powerful in this world. It's called hala'at man, mayim nukvim. It allows the feminine waters to rise above. Briefly stated, what that means is the feminine is usually the receiving end. We are on the receiving end from the flow above, from the divine flow. But here the receiving end is doing something to trigger the flow to come down from above. So by doing this, by making a change in our nature, by transforming ourselves, by going from darkness to light, we're able to trigger that. And that, of course, brings about Lamshich Ora Shekhinah, that brings about the light of the Shekhinah in a revealed way. B'chinat Gilui Or En So Baruch Hu Al Nafsho Elokit, in a revealed way on his Nefesh Elokit, on his divine soul, which is where Shebemochin Sheberosho, which is in the brain, in the head. B'zeh Yuvan Tov Ma Shekatuv Ki Hashem Elokecha Esh Ochelahu. Through this, we can understand the verse that says that Hashem, your God, is a consuming fire. What does that mean? That's how he ends the chapter. That's how he ends the first portion of the book, the Tanya. You want Hashem to be your God? You want to connect with Him? You have to be subservient to Him. Esh Ochela. In other words, He's a consuming fire. You have to consume in the same way your Nefesh HaBehemit in order to be cancelled out and be subservient to Him. This is something that not everybody wishes to do, unfortunately. To be subservient to Him, to let go of my wishes, what I want, and instead say, I'm more interested in what he wants. That's what's necessary. That is the secret of transformation of the human being. Don't do what you want, do what Hashem wants. Isn't that more important? Imagine a husband and wife who have an argument saying to each other, let's forget about what I want and what you want. Let's do what he wants. Well, how are we going to know that? Well, we can find out. We'll ask a rabbi. We ask somebody who's knowledgeable, a third party. There wouldn't be any fights. That is why it's important to remember, Hashem Elokecha esh ochela. He's a burning fire. You want to be able to connect to that burning fire. You have to also be a burning fire in the sense that you will consume that nefesh habehemit. I would add, a burning fire could also mean to do the mitzvot in an ardent way, in a loving way for Hashem. Not in a routine way. People do things out of routine because they're used to it. That is a very, very important lesson. And I think that if people focus just on that itself, that the key to succeed in connecting to Hashem properly is to be subservient to Him, to do His will, even if it's difficult, even if it's challenging, they will accomplish a great deal. They will be able to change themselves, even though we all have habits and we all have tendencies and we're inclined to certain things because of our nature, we will gain the upper hand. We will be able to have the upper hand in defeating the Yetzer Hara by controlling ourselves, which is what the rabbis tell us. Who is really a strong man? Not one who can lift 400 kilos, weightlifting. Hakovesh et Yitzro. He is to be admired. He conquered his evil inclination. Why would anybody want to do that if he's not interested in Hashem? Conquer my evil inclination? That's too hard. Yeah, not everybody thinks of it. That is why the Torah is the only way that a person can enlighten himself in seeing what life is all about and what he really is capable of doing if he really sets out to do it. Hashem will help him. Only through Torah. Torah will guide him, illuminate his way, show him, bring more clarity into his life to know right from wrong, what is a priority and what is not. That is what the Torah is all about. So we've been speaking about how the Torah is a vessel and a levush and a garment for the Shekhinah. Yes, but in the end, it's not just the Torah itself, it's the mitzvot of the Torah that need to be performed. And obviously, if one performs them with greater kavanah and with more understanding, then he will merit that B'ezrat Hashem, the revelation of the Shekhinah will be a lot more powerful in him as well.